Hello, Mark here with the Exiles. I hope you're safe and well. So, super miserable, wet, windy English day today, but this is dedication. I'm freezing, but I want to do some filming. We are still in a type of lockdown, which means I can't train indoors, can't train with other people, so all the usual apologies that I make on every single video for the last couple of months. I'm sorry about the wind, I'm sorry about the weather, and I'm sorry about the visuals. But look, I had a question around being left-handed, using a sword with your left hand if you're a left-handed person, and it's been about 2 weeks since, or even 3 weeks since I had that question, and I thought, look, I want to try and do my best to answer it, even if it's not an ideal day to do so. So we're a bit challenged when we look at left-handed people, because this question, in the Exiles, we tend to have a certain approach with left-handed people, but what we also do is we kind of tailor it to the individual. Sometimes, although it's rare, you may be left-handed with things like writing and you know, other things like that, using a mouse and so on with your PC, but you may still prefer swinging a weapon with your right hand. Okay, that's a bit rare. It's a bit of a difficult one to deal with because, and I've said a couple of times, and we will do it, we will commit to doing it, but there's a lot of evidence to support the fact, we will do a video on this, there's a lot of evidence to support the fact that of the period you would have fought right-handed no matter what. So we will get to committing that to video. That being said, this is 2020, and in my personal view as a martial artist, if you're left-handed, that's your dominant hand, that's your dominant side. So we should do our best to work to your strengths and not make you fight in a way that's going to be completely unnatural to you. So we generally, in the group, we accommodate left-handers as left-handers, and we will work through the system and the curriculum with that in mind. The reason why it's super challenging to be a left-hander is because I think it's 1 in 18 people are left-handed. Is because your opponent is still likely to be right-handed. Okay, so they are going to work with the preferences of a right-handed fighter. They are going to be stronger from their right side. They're going to have their right hand up on the top of the hilt, which means things like strips and disarms and manipulations, even cutting. Obviously, they're going to favour their right side, which means as a left-hander, you're going to struggle with some of the plays. Okay, especially some of the ones where you're manipulating their arms and things like that. The other thing, of course, is the posture. Okay, so being right-handed, I am right-handed. The posture are pretty, they're pretty defined for me. Being a left-hander, of course, the easiest thing to do would be just to say, well, do the opposite. So if I'm porte de faux with my right hand, being a left-hander, I would just do the exact opposite. This is going to be weird for me, but I'm going to do my best. So what I'm going to do is go through some things to think about, and I'm going to give you some things to take away. So some subtle differences with plays and a way to think about approaching some of these things, assuming your opponent is right-handed. If you do a lot of training as a left-hander, you're always going to be the one going against the right-handed people. So from that perspective, you're going to have a little bit of an edge because you're used to working against right-handed people, whereas the right-handed people are not used to working with a left-handed person. So as much as it's a challenge, there are also some benefits as well. So let's work through some plays, some principles, and think about some of those key differences. Again, just to stress though, I'm going to go through some bits to take away, but for us, if you train with us, we tailor some of this to the individual. Okay, so I'm going to show some options, not all the options, and they might not always be the best options for the individual, but at least I'm giving you something to think about. So, posture first, okay? The easiest way we deal with this is you do all of your posture exactly the same on a period, okay? So for example, as a right-hander, I would do posture on the right side like this, and I would do posture on the left side like this, okay? The posture. I'd do the posture on a guard like this, okay? Because I'm right-handed. Left hand, it's basically the exact opposite. Okay, it's from a posture perspective and a guard's perspective. It's really straightforward. You just do the mirror image, if you like. So on the right shoulder, where I was doing this as a right-hander, as a left-hander, you would do the opposite. So you do this, okay, So as a right-hander, I would do that posture with the point forward over my left shoulder. You will do it over your right shoulder. Okay, mechanically, it's working to your strengths of having the left hand up high on the hilt. Okay. Port to the throw is an easy one, yeah, like this for a right-hander. For a left-hander, like this, okay? Dented Chingali for a right-hander is on my left side, like this. For a left-hander, it will be on your right side, like this. So it's, in summary, it's very straightforward. Just do the exact mirror opposite, okay? Let's talk about sword in one hand first. So, as I say, the opponent is generally always going to be right-handed, so mechanically, some of the things are going to work a little bit different, okay? As a right-hander, against a fendente from my opponent's right to my left, well, that's pretty straightforward. There's a cover, there's a beat, and if I'm on this side, there's a break. For a left-hander, your posture will be opposite, so instead of being on the right like this, you'll be on the left like that, okay? So where we are making all of our covers and actions on the right as a right-hander, you will do what a right-hander would do against actions from there to their right shoulder from the opponent's left. So if a cut comes into my left shoulder, I would do this cover with my left hand, which for a right-hander would be on this side, okay? Again, I'm starting like this. So if my opponent is doing a fendente and I want to break that weapon, well, that's really straightforward. I'm just going to break out like this, with or without a step. Whereas for a right-hander, that would be against the cut to their right shoulder, so they would break this way, okay? In terms of beats, well, you're on the wrong side to beat against a right-hander, but obviously everything's done from both sides. So from this side, you would be in this position. You would beat basically coming this way behind the opponent's weapon, whereas for a right-hander, that's accessible straight from the posture, yeah, but they will also have to deal with cuts to their right from their left, where they'll be in the mirror sort of opposite side, the mirror image, if you like. So they would beat like this, whereas against a right-hander, you would beat like that as a lefty. This is weird using it with my left hand. So effectively, in our curriculum, we do everything with one hand on both sides, okay? So we'll do all of our covering, beating actions from this side, we'll do covers on this side, yeah, breaks on this side, all from our posture, yeah, and if we're on this side, we'll do beats, and you can do covers. For a lefty, it's exactly the same, but on the opposite side. So against cuts to my left, my opponent's right, there's a cover, there's a break, okay? Cannot beat, but I can beat against cuts to my right shoulder from their left, okay? And if you find yourself on this side of your body as a left-hander, then you've got the beat from that side, okay? So really what you have to think about is the frequency of the kind of attacks that you're getting, okay? With one hand versus one hand, most of your attacks will be from your initial attacks will be from your opponent's right side to your left, okay? So you may either want to get really good at using the left hand from your mirrored left-handed posture, okay, and get really comfortable with doing things like covers from that side, or breaks from that side, or you may want to drift over and use this posture from the one-handed, or even up on the hip, which is one of the postures shown in the manuscript, okay? So as a right-hander, we would be like this. As a left-hander, you'd be like that. And from these positions, what you need to do is get yourself comfortable with beats, breaks, and covers, depending on which side you want to do them from. So, you know, it's, as I say, it's a much more, you've got to consider a lot more as a left-hander because you're going against a right-handed person most of the time. So once you've nailed those sort of fluid beats, breaks, and cover actions with one hand, then you obviously have to think about the plays, okay? So again, and although Fiore says you can do things on both sides of your body and you should do the plays from your left on your right, that is actually not the case at all, okay? Because if I'm right-handed versus right-handed, with two hands on the weapon or whatever, the plays, most of the plays work completely different if the person's cut into my right from their left. As much as Fiore says, yeah, when you've done all the plays on this side, practice them on the other side, that's the single worst bit of advice in the manuscript because none of it really works the same. As a lefty, it's a case of modifying your approach because the opponent's right hand is going to be the one that's on the top of their hilt, okay? So you have to think about that when you're doing some of those plays. So from a one-handed perspective, let's work through some of those plays. Well, some of them are really straightforward. So for example, the third play of the one-handed, in Everything I Find You Uncovered, is how that play starts. For a righty, that's super easy, okay? Because I'm already in my posture, they're going to cut at me, I'm going to beat that posture, and I'm going to cut back down the line. I've found them uncovered after my beating action. From a lefty, well, from this posture, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to beat their right-handed action from this position because you can't get behind the weapon. So if you're doing that play, you're going to be coming at it from this side, okay? You're going to be beating up and cutting down. Exactly the same as a righty would do from this side, okay? But against the cut to their right from their left, okay? I'm sorry if this is getting confusing. I'm finding it difficult myself to keep swapping sides as well, and so you may have to watch this through a couple of times or whatever. In terms of some of the plays that we're covering and drawing through, well, you can get to a lot of those covers from this posture, but on this side of your body. So you're making the cover on this side of your body. From here, again, it's that case of modification. So, for example, if my opponent is cutting to my left from their right, as a righty, I've got this cover, and from here I've got lots of plays. Okay, I've got push and draw through, etc. Wow, super windy. Sorry, I did say it was windy today. As a lefty, okay, well, you're not going to get that cover from this side. You're not going to get it from this side either. So you have to modify what it is that you're seeing. From this cover, you can still do quite a lot, okay? You can still make this cover, and instead of pushing at the arm, you can check the arm and draw the thrust, okay? All you're doing with that as a righty, when you're making this cover and you're covering against the arm, is you're just keeping it there for a second just to give you the space to pull your thrust through. As a lefty, that's the main principle of the play, is to make the cover, check the arm and pull on your thrust. So you can do that as a lefty using the same principle of the play, okay? So you may start here, you'll make the cover, you can, I mean, this is optional really, you don't even have to check the arm, you're going to have the dominant hand forward just to do the thrust. But because their weapon is live, and they probably will want to keep moving, you can check that arm. It's going to be super close. Their weapon's going to be here, their arm's going to be extended. You can check the arm just to give you the space to do the thrust. So that's one example. With things like breaking the thrust with one hand, well, that's super easy because that's an exact mirror image of the right. So from here, as a right-hander, the thrust would come in, I would lift it up, break the thrust, and from there I've got options. As a lefty, in your lefty posture, it's exactly the same. They thrust, I'm going to step up, cut down on top of that to break the thrust, and from there you've got options. So things like breaking the thrust work absolutely just exactly the same, okay? So that's a couple of things to think about with one-handed. Two-handed is where it gets a little bit more complicated still, again, because my opponent is generally always going to be right-handed. So lots of the plays work differently. So we've already talked a little bit about posture, and again, generally speaking, although it's very general, as a lefty, I would say in the Exiles to do with your posture the exact mirror image. So we've already talked about that, okay? So how do some of the plays work? Well, let's look at the first couple of plays of Largo. So first of all, there's a right-hander, okay? I would be high and on the right side of my body, as per manuscript. They don't have to be, I can be in other positions as well, but this is how we set them up from the sort of textbook plays. Person's going to cut in at me, I'm going to cover or cut back at them. In this case, I've covered posture frontale. So as a righty, my options are pretty simple. If I cover, let's say, posture frontale / longer, sort of the incrusada hybrid that we see, if my opponent's centre line is open, i.e. I've displaced their cut, and I've got the opening, I'm just going to thrust down the line, okay? So that's sort of Largo action number one. Keeping the left foot forward because I'm reacting and I want to stay at distance, okay? As a lefty, swapping the arms around, you'd be in this posture, okay? Because from a right perspective, it's here. So as a left-handed perspective, it's here because it's the mirror opposite. It's the same principle. So your left foot's already forward. person's cutting in at my left shoulder, I'm going to cut out to meet incrusada, or cover into incrusada, and from here it's the same principle. So if I've displaced their weapon and I've got their centre line open, the thrust goes in, okay, the left-handed thrust goes in, exactly the same. Oh, that's weird. Exactly the same, okay. In terms of the next action, where the opponent has the centre line and they can thrust, this is where it gets a bit more complicated as a lefty. So from a right-handed perspective, super straightforward. They cut in, we meet incrusada, okay, their point is now online, so I've met a little bit onto my right, so their thrust is now online. From a right-sided perspective, super easy. I'm going to clear that thrust away from my face, I'm going to cut back down the opening, okay, that's those entry plays into the Largo. From a left-handed perspective, this is where it starts to get really clunky and where you have to find your own way in certain respects. But from this posture, okay, with the left hand, same setup, opponent's going to cut in, I'm going to cut back at them, or cover, or find that incrusada however we find it. From here, okay, so I've made the cover and it's on the right side of my body because they've won the centre line. Being left-handed on the weapon, this is where the consideration gets much more difficult, because from a right-handed perspective it's really easy to clear the line against someone cutting from their right to my left. From a left-handed perspective, it's a little bit more clunky, and there's a couple of different options. So the main option is to clear the line in the same way, but what it will mean is that you have to pass the weapon around the back of your hand, which means you've got to cross your hands, and that's a kind of a no-no in the system. But if you're at Largo and you've got that distance, it's still a very applicable option, and the risk of your opponent grabbing hold of your hands or taking advantage of the fact that they're crossed is very, very slim. Okay, so that's one option at least. We cut out, okay, they've won the centre line, I'm going to clear that line, cut straight back down as I recover, exactly the same as we do from a right-handed perspective. So that's one option from there. The other option is a slightly different type of cut around, okay, where you're not clearing the line, you're kind of just ignoring it, and you're using your footwork to bring you off. So from your left-handed version of Possidonno on this side, you're going to cut out or cover, however, you're going to meet incrusada on the punta right at the end, okay, because we're quite far away. So I'm here. My opponent can thrust, it's all the same setup, so rather than doing this sort of clunky clear of the centre line, what you can do, and this is super hard to show without an opponent during this lockdown, is you can literally just lift the weapon up and cut straight back down the line. Okay, that felt really weird for me, trying to do it left-handed. If I show you from a right-sided perspective, right-handed perspective, so from a righty, we've got either clear the line, cut straight back down, or we've got what I tend to do, which is we meet, the opponent's won the centre line, so I come up and I come straight back down. So you can effectively do that with the left hand on. So we're meeting, opponent's won centre line, I come up to clear it, untangle and cut straight back down the line. So those are two options for entering into that play, if you like, and how we start to look at Gioco Largo from a left-handed perspective. The Largo can get quite complicated with trying to be a lefty against a righty, but like with sword in one hand, a lot of the principles work the same. So breaking of the thrust, the exchange of thrust, well, I would do that from low, let's say Porta di Ferro. A lefty would do that from their mirror Porta di Ferro. So if the opponent thrusts, they're going to come up, okay, and they're going to exchange thrusts in the same way, but just and this is irrelevant. If your opponent is right or left-handed, the thrust is going to only come down the centre line. So this all, I mean, that feels so weird being right-handed, trying to do it left-handed, but the principle works exactly the same. In terms of breaking the thrust, as that thrust comes in, or from a right-handed perspective, super easy. I'm going to break that and cut up or whatever. From a left-handed perspective, exactly the same. Come offline, break the thrust. There's your satani, whatever. In terms of some of the binds and wraps from Largo, so what you have to do again is think about how you're happy to hold your weapon when you're attacking your opponent back. So for example, with one of the wraps, I might cover posta frontale really close. I might start coming over and wrapping my opponent's arms and weapon to free my arm as I've bound them up to hit them back. Well, from a left-handed perspective, in principle, there's no difference. You're going to start in a different posture, and you're going to still start on the right-hand side. So let's think about left and left. So you might start from a left version of dented Galway. Is this right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. So you might start from dented Galway. Opponent's going to cut into you. You're going to cover posta frontale, which from a right-handed perspective is on both sides. So from a left-handed perspective is on both sides as well. Okay, you're going to cover posta frontale over the lead foot as a left-hander, and this is where I say about you have to think about how you're happy to hold the weapon. But you're going to come forward, start the wrap, but you're going to hold the sword like this. Okay, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you means you've got that thrust on, and as you recover or whatever, you just drop the hand back on. And as a right-handed person, we do that all the time. Yeah, we thrust like this. Yeah, you can cut like that. As long as you know how to recover the weapon, it's exactly the same if you're left-handed. So from your left-handed dented Galway, posta frontale, there's the wrap, there's the turn, there's the thrust. Yeah, the reason why considerations like this have to be made as a lefty is because my opponent is right-handed. Okay, because I'm trying to wrap their arms as it's on the right side of their body, the left of mine. It can't always just be the exact opposite of a right-hander, because the arms are the wrong way around on the weapon. I'll say wrong way around. They are the wrong way around. Lefties should be made to be right-handed. Okay, so yeah, but you understand the principle. Yeah, you just have to think in those sort of different terms and what you're happy to do with regards to holding onto the weapon. You know, within the Exiles we do have left-handed options for all the plays, and this is something that your instructor can give to you if you're a member and you're left-handed and you'll want to fight left-handed. Let's be clear, because I say over the years a surprising amount of left-handed people have wanted to fight right-handed. Now, I'm not sure if that's because they feel uncomfortable doing things different or because they don't want to be awkward, but as I say, we encourage lefties to fight left-hand dominant because that's the dominant side of your body. But we do also, as I say, we do have left-handed versions of all of the plays as well, and I'm trying to work from memory here to remember what they are. Where it gets super complicated is gioco stretto, the close plays. So let's go for a couple of options. Again, I'm not going through like the definitive, here's the left-handed versions of the plays. I'm trying to give you some things to think about, because a lot of this stuff you can just look at the manuscript, practice, and just, again, because you're generally always going to be fighting right-handed people, you're going to find your own way of doing your left-handed versions of these plays. So let's briefly look at gioco stretto. So the first play from a right-handed perspective is that I'm going to reach over my opponent's weapon. I'll throw the play on the screen. Is you're going to reach over your opponent's weapon after the incrusada, and you're going to take control of that weapon and pull on your thrust. Okay, so I'm here as a right-hander. I'm going to cut out or cover out. Let's be clear, it could be either, or I could have just found this as the fight's unfolding. We're mezza spada. I'm going to come over, grab a hold, and pull the thrust on. From a left-handed perspective, it's clunky, but there, okay? So, and again, as a lefty, if you practice this a lot, it will be less clunky for you than it is for me, because I'm not left-handed. So we're here, okay, in our mirror image posture, okay, with the point forward. Same principle though, I'm cutting from the right, so I'm stepping from the right generally to enter into that stretto distance. We've met in crusada. This is again something we have to think about in terms of how we want to maintain our grip on the weapon as we reach over. So, because my opponent is right-handed, I'm reaching over and grabbing them in the middle of their hilt, as Fiore says. Now, I can do that in a very simple way as a lefty by just grabbing hold of it and pulling on the thrust. Okay, so that's actually a much easier way for a lefty than it is for a righty, because for a righty, I'm not really going to let go of this arm. Okay, I mean I could, but it's not got a very high success rate. So I'm coming over with the left arm. As a lefty though, because you're keeping your dominant hand in control of the weapon, it's very easy for you to grab hold of that and basically just pull on the thrust. This is similar to a play later in that section where Fiore's dealing with the cover on the other side of the body, where he effectively lets go as a righty, he effectively lets go and lifts up their weapon. It's very similar to that as a lefty. You're basically just grabbing hold of it. You can lift it up, push it high, whatever, but that's the easiest way to do it. Again though, it depends on how you're happy to maintain control of your weapon, because if I'm from this posture, cutting right foot forward, meeting stretto in crosada, you can still do the play with your offhand, okay? Because you can reach over with your left hand, your dominant hand, and still pull this weapon to your hip, okay? I'm not controlling it like I would with if I was right-handed with the weapon or with the hand up by the cross, but this is completely acceptable because I'm only going to be thrusting with it, okay? And if I need to recover, well then I recover, yeah? Or if it gets a bit messy or whatever, I need to cut back into a posture, well exactly the same as we would do as a right-handed, as I would do as a right-handed person, you would do as a left-handed person. So again, I'm giving you an example of the mechanics of the play, but being modified to suit your preference, and it is really about preference, okay? So that's that one. The other plays in terms of closing with the pommel and things like that, broadly speaking, the next sequence of plays work the same, okay? So as a lefty, I'll do the left-handed posture, okay? We're out in crosada. I've got a massive opening to my opponent's right because of where we've met. That pommel strike and cut down works exactly the same, okay? So as a right-handed person, I'm here, I found an opening, I'm going to strike that, cut fendente down or close. From a left-handed perspective, it works exactly the same, okay? I'm cutting through, okay? The big opening I'm going to hit with the pommel and I'm going to cut straight back down the line. You're going to recover into a different posture than a righty would. So that works exactly the same. The checking of the arm gets a bit interesting, but effectively that works the same. Again, depending on how you're happy to maintain control of your weapon down on the hilt. The binds and stuff, again, they work broadly the same, but there are, as I say, there are plays in the stretto section which deal with a right-handed person, and the opponent obviously being right-handed as well, dealing with covers that they make on their opposite side. So instead of everything happening on this side, we've got plays where everything happens on this side, and some of those plays include, and I think I've shown these in a couple of instructions recently, where I might make a cover, grab a hold of my opponent's pommel, lift the weapon up, I'll throw the image on the screen, and I'll pull the weapon through, my own weapon through, to make the thrust. As a lefty, that works wonderfully, okay? So it's an easy frontale to make because my right foot's going to be forward from those sort of posture on this side. You can let go and, as I say, maintain control down on the pommel, or you can just grab with your right hand, so your offhand, and push this way, okay? Because your left hand is going to stay dominant on the sword and in control up by the cross, the mechanics of plays on that side, even though my opponent is right-handed, are super easy, okay, and are really going to play to your strengths. So it's definitely worth looking at those sort of left-sided covers and the plays on the left side in the manuscript, because they will become your natural strengths regardless of your opponent being right-handed or not. The other thing as well is to think about how you're going to modify things like your offline movements and stuff. So in class, if people are, your instructor's doing sort of a right-handed technique and demonstrating a right-handed technique, and they will make sort of offline movements into the weapon, sometimes as a secondary offline movement or to force a bit of pressure to make a bind work. As a lefty, generally speaking, if you're making the cover on the side you need to against a right-handed person, your crease will go in the same direction as what your instructor is showing you, okay? And they will make that clear to you if you're an Exiles member. But what I'm trying to say is, mechanically, some of the things work a bit different being a lefty, but in terms of positioning your opponent, because they're right-handed, some of those movements with the feet to apply pressure, to enter into stretto, a lot of those things will work the same for a lefty as a righty. So some things to think about. As I say, it's an absolutely miserable day, but I wanted to at least do something. This is, like a lot of these videos during this COVID thing, is not going to make complete sense about an opponent, and of course my demonstration might have been a bit fluffy because I'm struggling using my left hand on the weapon. Yeah, it's very strange, But the important thing to think about is, I guess, what you're happy to modify about your approach, so that you can either apply things as close as you can to the right-handed version, or modify them completely but maintain the principle. And hopefully I can give you some examples of that. So if I'm doing a rap, you're still going to do a rap as a lefty, but you might have to modify it. You're still probably going to use your left hand because they're right-handed, but you might have to take the sword into a slightly different place than the manuscript tells you. You might have to, as I say, maintain right-handed control down on the weapon at times, because mechanically those plays might not work with the right hand coming off the weapon. So yeah, bit of a mumble, but it's what you asked for, and so hopefully it's made some sense to you. Good luck, and when you're back at training, your instructor, who I've spoken to about this already, will give you lots more options than I have. So thanks very much.